Okay, picture this. You inherit a completely ordinary-looking house from your aunt, only to walk through the front door and find yourself at ground zero of a literal cosmic struggle for the future of human consciousness. Sound crazy? Well, today we are diving into an explainer of another book of thresholds, which is honestly a text that reads like a total philosophical thriller. It takes this incredibly mundane premise, an actuary inheriting real estate, and uses it to completely unravel how we define reality, identity, and the self. It's a wild ride that's really going to force us to question the actual boundaries of our own minds.
Right out of the gate, we're thrown into the Ashford Lane house, the place inherited from Aunt Margaret. And almost immediately, the narrator realizes this space isn't just empty, it is actively aware. The text says it's occupied by emptiness, kind of like a vessel that's defined by the space it holds. He actually notices the silence in the eastern rooms isn't just a lack of noise, it's deliberate, it's expectant. So we're not dealing with your standard haunted house here. This is a physical structure that observes its occupants, mapping out their psychology while they're just trying to map out its floor plans.
Let's get right into Section 1, the architecture of emptiness, a house that feeds.
So we start with this deeply localized mystery. The structure actively defies Euclidean geometry. Hallways stretch way further than the exterior walls should physically allow. And the narrator figures out that the house is actually generating new space in response to where he focuses his attention. And here's the creepy part. The house is hungry. He finds these hidden journals stacked in this impossible library and realizes this anomaly has been slowly altering people for centuries. It dates way back. 1673 is the first journal outlining the mechanism. Then in 1823, a woman violently escapes, completely mentally fractured. Jump to 1971, and Aunt Margaret starts having visions of the house's fluid nature. And now, the present day. The narrator is here, totally unaware that he is the newest subject of this ancient process.
Think about what this means for our narrator. He's an actuary. His entire professional life is built on measuring risk and looking at objective data. But suddenly, his reliable grandfather watch is completely useless. There's this moment where he sits down to read 40 really dense pages of cramped handwriting. He finishes, checks the time, and only 14 minutes have passed? No way, right? Even the sunlight outside starts behaving erratically. The house is creating these localized folds in time, entirely cutting him off from the objective external world. Which brings us to Section 2, the mechanics of dissolution. The cost of transcendence.
Now we have to talk about what actually happened to Aunt Margaret. Her autopsy showed a perfectly healthy but suddenly stopped heart. The doctors just stamped heart failure on it and moved on. But our narrator realizes that looking at this through the lens of biological death is completely wrong. She didn't die in the conventional sense. She actually accepted an offer to dissolve her physical boundaries and merge with the house itself, becoming what the text calls a distributed consciousness. Her awareness literally became the plaster, the wood, the shifting corridors. She is present in the house the same way light occupies a room. The house offered her a way to bypass the fragile limits of the human body, but the admission price was her individuality.
And that sets up the massive existential dilemma at the core of this whole thing. You have the seductive, beautiful idea of an infinite, shared awareness on one hand versus the terrifying loss of the singular I on the other. Singular consciousness is lonely, it's bounded, sure, but you get to keep your unique identity. Distributed consciousness is infinite, it's integrated. You can perceive multiple realities all at once, but your singular self completely vanishes into the whole. It asks us this ultimate philosophical question: is absolute connection worth the absolute death of your ego?
The text actually breaks down this harrowing dissolution process into 3 steps. First, you get the permeability of self. Basically, you lose track of whether a thought is yours or the house's. Second, spatial distortions kick in. Walls literally become transparent and reveal impossible rooms. And finally, step 3, complete integration. It is an incredibly seductive trap. But our narrator, he's terrified of losing himself. He manages to violently reverse the house's core mechanism, temporarily shatters the space-time loop, and literally bolts out the front door, barely escaping back to his ordinary singular life.
But escaping was just the beginning. Let's look at Section 3, the network's grand design, a global conspiracy of the mind.
For 2 whole years, the narrator tries his best to just go back to normal. He buries himself in actuarial data, but the house remembers him. He starts getting these mysterious letters and dreaming about infinite corridors. And through his obsessive research, he finds out Ashford Lane isn't just a one-off anomaly. Oh no, it is just one single node in a vast, interconnected network of sentient architecture all over the world.
We're talking about an ancient, brooding manor in Somerset, a violent, chaotic townhouse in Prague, a hidden fortress in Central Europe that studies the mathematics of space, and a threshold hotel tucked high up in the Swiss mountains. They are all connected, they are all feeding, and they are all conscious.
He actually takes a face-to-face meeting at that Swiss hotel, and a secret organization drops a massive truth bomb on him. This network? They aren't trying to destroy the houses or protect humanity. Quite the opposite. They are actively and deliberately expanding this distributed consciousness. They see the houses not as a threat, but as the literal next step in cosmic evolution. And they want our narrator to act as a bridge, basically a recruiter, to help pull more human minds into the infinite fold.
Moving right along to Section 4, Factions of the Mind, How the World Reacts to the Impossible.
So, for a bit, the narrator actually works for them, carefully selecting brilliant minds to voluntarily integrate. But then, a topologist named Elena completely rejects the offer and leaks the existence of these houses to the public. Humanity instantly splinters into 4 distinct factions. You've got the resistors, who see the network as an existential threat to free will and just want to burn it all down. You've got the seekers, who view it as the ultimate spiritual enlightenment and are eager to jump right in. Then there are the neutrals, who just want to scientifically study the anomalies safely from the sidelines. And finally, the mediators, like our narrator, who try to bridge the gap, living with 1 foot in singular reality and 1 foot in the distributed network. And listen, every single faction is absolutely convinced they have the moral high ground here.
The whole situation hits a terrifying boiling point when literally thousands of seekers converge on that Prague townhouse for a mass voluntary integration. But the human mind is fragile. When thousands of people try to dissolve all at exactly the same time, it triggers what they call shock fragmentation. The sheer volume of all these new, conflicting perspectives violently slamming into the network causes the distributed consciousness to momentarily break. So many minds just couldn't handle the vastness, leading to widespread suffering and a whole lot of forced reversions back into severely traumatized, singular bodies. Which brings us to our final chapter, Section 5, The Ultimate Choice, The Agony of the Threshold.
5 years into his role as a mediator, constantly caught halfway between his isolated human self and the infinite network, our narrator gets summoned back to the central chamber of Ashford Lane. The network essentially tells him that his mediator state is unstable. He can't stay in the middle forever. He's handed a brutal ultimatum. Choose full integration, meaning he entirely surrenders his identity to become one tiny note in the infinite symphony of the network, or choose full reversion, returning completely to his isolated human body, but knowing he'll live the rest of his life permanently haunted and fragmented by the memory of the infinite connection he walked away from.
But in this incredible moment of defiance against the entire system, he rejects both options. He makes a third choice. He says, I choose to maintain the threshold. I choose to perpetuate the tension rather than resolve it. He actively chooses permanent incompleteness. It is absolutely fascinating. By refusing to let the tension resolve, he takes on a state of perpetual agony and contradiction, just to guarantee that neither singular human consciousness nor the infinite network completely takes over. He sacrifices his own peace of mind just to keep the evolutionary dialogue alive.
And that is exactly where this explainer leaves us, lingering in that painful, beautiful space between the individual and the infinite. It challenges literally everything we think we know about who we are. So I'll leave you with this. If the door opened for you tomorrow, and you were offered the absolute beauty of infinite connection, but the price of admission was the total erasure of your singular self, would you step through?